I see owners that leave serious money on the table when they really don't do preventative maintenance. And then they call me and say, hey, I'm ready to sell my apartment complex. I walk around it and the fascia boards are all rotten out and the gutters are backed up. And you can see that the downspouts have been crushed and water's been intruding into the siding.
Well, preventive maintenance is preservation of your assets. Regardless if how you view maintenance in general, you're going to have to pay now or pay later. There's no getting around it.
Well, from my side of the desk, when I see a property hit the market and a buyer is looking at it, if there are not records for inspections and preventative work, the buyers automatically discount that.
I will say that as far as cost benefit, preventive maintenance far outweighs replacement. Every time, every single time.
Welcome back to Commercial Connections. I'm René Nelson, CCIM with PacWest Commercial Real Estate. And today I have the great pleasure of talking to Tanner Drey, who is with Ehlers Construction right here in Eugene, Springfield. And man, I'm excited to talk to you. They do a wealth of services that you may not be aware of. So they do restoration, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and roofing, all right here in the Lane County, Eugene, Springfield area. So Tanner, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. Excited. So
ready to be grilled?
I am. I'm always ready to be grilled. Yeah.
Right on. Well, let's jump into it. Give the listeners a quick version of Ehlers Construction and a little bit about the services that you guys provide.
So Ehlers Construction has been around for about 67 years. So it's been around in the community for a long time and a good community partner. Our focus is pretty much taking care of the customer for all their needs, and the majority of the stuff we can do in-house. But we have supporting companies, sister companies that provide services like the electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, right? So it really allows us to be more of a powerhouse. We can really facilitate the needs of most customers. Yeah. So our whole point to doing that is to making it nice and easy and simple to get your projects done, because when you have all of that at your disposal, it's just more efficient and the customers have a better experience and everyone's happy all around.
Yeah. Well, I've grown up in Eugene, Springfield my whole life. And I've seen your trucks and your company name and everything else. When you guys originally started, were you a construction company?
Yeah, okay. Originally construction. Majority of most companies start out that way, yes.
Yeah. Well, as both a homeowner and a property owner, commercial property owner, as well as a commercial real estate broker, I can tell you it's great to have a guy like you who, like you said, have all these sister companies with the roofing, the HVAC, the electrical, because sometimes you really don't know where to go. You've got maybe a specific problem, but once you start down that rabbit hole, then there's bigger water problems like water intrusion. And we're going to talk about that and kind of get into some of the things that you see. So let's start with preventative maintenance. So talk a little bit about, because I see owners that leave serious money on the table when they really don't do preventative maintenance. And then they call me and say, hey, I'm ready to sell my apartment complex. And, I walk around it and the fascia boards are all rotten out and the gutters are backed up. And you can see that the downspouts have been crushed and water's been intruding into the siding. So talk a little bit about preventative maintenance and how do you look at that? The analytics show that most people have not subscribed. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. It helps our analytics and it also allows me to create more great content in the future.
Well, preventative maintenance is really, if you boil it down, it's preservation of your assets. And regardless if how you view maintenance in general, you're going to have to pay now or pay later. There's no getting around it. And typically what we find is when people who are trying to push off the maintenance, they typically have to deal with a larger problem. So because things don't just stop. When you start seeing the signs of like water intrusions and rot and failure on substrates, that's kind of already too late. And so there's certain things you can do to prevent that. You can't totally eliminate it because that's just the nature of living in this area. We live in a very wet climate, and our ground shifts, so things change. It's just how it is. So what I find is that it's really better to come up with a plan and do that plan based upon a schedule and do it the same way every time. So top to down, from top to bottom, really look at a maintenance plan as a way to preserve your assets versus like, I'm just spending more and more money.
So if a 30-unit apartment owner came to you with zero property management history, let's say it's been owner managed up to this point, they just bought it, they're coming to you and saying, hey, either let's do the inspections while we're doing due diligence, or we bought it, now we own it, now let's preserve it. So somebody comes to you, 30 units, zero history, where do you start?
I always say, top down, right? And exterior, interior. So take a look at the exterior, because the number one thing that we really want to prevent is water damage. Water damage can be extremely expensive. If it's gone too long, insurances won't cover it. And so you have to look at it that way, is how do I save the most amount of potential money? And so I always say top down. So start with your roof, start with your flashing, start with your waterproofing. And if you start seeing things as you're walking around the exterior, you start seeing siding that's got paint that's curling off or that's bubbling or soft spots, or you see that the gutter is trailing over and it's leaking over onto the fascia. If you have those sort of things, it's been going on a lot longer than what you just saw, right? Yeah. So start from the top down, exterior, and then go interior. And then in your interiors, you really want to check your things that are going to cause the most damage, which is your water heaters, and it's your ducting, and it's your vents and your crawl space. Because if you don't have enough ventilation, you're going to have mold issues, and that can get expensive. So, a really good partner in that is get a good inspector, someone who can really go through the whole property and come up with a plan for you, or you yourself get eyes on it and then start there. But don't simply just push it to the side, because the more you push it to the side, then the bigger the problems can get. So
that is very true. Well, from my side of the desk, when I see a property hit the market and a buyer is looking at it, if there are not records for inspections and preventative work, the buyers automatically discount that.
Correct.
Because they know, oh man, there's probably going to be issues, and not everything gets turned up during a due diligence inspection. I just had a client that bought an office building, and we had an HVAC inspection. We had a full commercial inspection. And then they decided that they were going to redo the HVAC while they put on a new roof, because flat roof, the HVAC was up on the top. And while they were removing the HVAC units off of the roof, they realized that the previous owner had been venting the HVAC through just soffits in the ceilings. And they weren't really lined properly.
Yeah.
And so, you just are not going to know some things about a building until you make a change like that, and then you're going to deal with it. So
right. Yeah. And that's where it's important, is to have those records, and it's important to have the due diligence to actually take care of what needs to be done, because if you don't, then, and you want to sell, and you like you said, you see this all the time, that buyer is taking on risk by not knowing. And that risk, that takes away from your ultimate sale price, right? So by getting ahead of those things, by looking at the preventative maintenance programs as something that are just really the cost of doing business, but it's in an effort to preserve your asset, versus this is just taking from my asset. So it's actually the inverse, right?
Yeah.
If you're not out there being proactive about your maintenance, if you're not out there looking to protect your asset, it's not going to benefit you in the end.
I would totally agree with that. Let's talk about the cost that you see consistently that blindsides owners. Talk about maybe the invisible kind where it's sitting behind a wall for 2 years and there's been maybe water penetration and I don't mean just a pipe that's burst. I mean the slow, predictable surprises that still catch people off guard. What do you see?
In my background in the trades in the field, and then also, working with the guys directly at Ehlers, water is a big deal. And it's not necessarily a bursted pipe. It can be a small leak. It can be something that no one really sees. So something that's really common, people will take and they'll do like tile in their shower. So they'll do, tile floor, right? And we find that the waterproofing isn't necessarily up to par with that. And so it takes years for that to fail. But I've tore into many, many shower pans where they're completely rotted out. And you start seeing signs. You start seeing cracks down by the pan, where the pan and the wall meet. And all of a sudden you're just like, why is that crack? Why do I have to keep on filling that crack with caulk? Why do I have to keep on putting sand and caulk in there? Well, there's a reason, right? Mm-hmm. You have a moisture problem, and that's causing deflection in the substrate. And that is why you're getting separation from your grout joint, because in theory, it shouldn't be doing it really at all. So things like that. People don't really know to look for. And I've torn apart many showers where simply the waterproofing failed and it's rotted out joists, it's rotted out walls, the whole subfloor is rotted out. Then you have to, at times even bring in engineering. So those things can really hit you hard. And then also people go in and they'll update their entire units and they'll put flooring or they'll put tile in their bathroom. But they won't raise the toilet flange. So the toilet flange is below the finished floor. Mm-hmm. Well, you want that to be, really at the very least level about a quarter inch above the finished floor. Mm-hmm. And the reason is it minimizes the amount of deflection between that wax ring and that toilet sitting there on that flange. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you get movement. Mm-hmm. And we get movement, you get problems. And so you'll see layers and layers and layers of flooring. So like, let's say it's an older building and they're like, oh, I don't want to pull up the asbestos floor because it's going to cost a lot. I'll just keep adding to it. Mm-hmm. I'll just keep adding to it, right? Well, they don't change that flange out. And all of a sudden it's like, why are these toilets leaking? Well, you don't necessarily see the problem because that flange is below the finished floor. And so it starts to spread underneath your finish.
Wow.
And so you have to think
crazy.
How do I foresee these things coming? And that's, really about just partnering with the right people, the right contractors who think about these things and who have the experience to back it up and go, hey, I just want it done right. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to do it and then 5 years later have to redo it because the person before me did it wrong. Right. Yeah. So, that's something else that I've seen is just that those little things, they get overlooked and then they can become really big problems.
Well, you mentioned about the flange, and I know that often when flooring guys or flooring specialists put in flooring, they won't put a toilet back in because they want a licensed plumber to put the toilet back in. Mm-hmm. So how would someone know whether the flange was where it should be?
So the flange needs to be about a quarter of an inch above finished floor.
Okay.
Right. Regardless of the finish. Right. So, and you're correct. A plumber should set the toilet. That's what they're trained to do. That's what they do. They're efficient at it. And they're going to be the ones that are going to know that information too. Mm-hmm. So let's say you have somebody go in and do the flooring and they're like, oh, you're going to have to have a plumber come and set the toilet. The plumber's going to know what he needs to do there, right? Mm-hmm. So he can do a fur cone or he can extend the flange. A lot of them they can go either way, right? Mm-hmm. I was always, when I was doing the work, I was always told my plumber, like, bring it up. I want that flange right to the top, mm-hmm. right? So it was the right way. It was stable. There was no questions. I could walk away from the job and know that I don't have to worry about it. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a lot about water intrusion, and you and I both know that we live in a wet, rainy area.
Yes.
So to me, it's typically the invisible kind that, like you said, gets behind siding, gets behind paneling, gets, to the point where it starts to seep and create the dry rot. What does it typically cost to remediate versus if you would have caught that early? And how would somebody have caught that early for water intrusion, say in siding?
Well, I mean, the cost, it's a hard question to answer because rot can be hidden in so many different ways that you could be like, man, that siding doesn't look quite right. And you pull it off and that whole wall is gone. Right. And you're just like, didn't expect that. Or you may see that there's just a little corner that got affected. I will say that as far as cost benefit, preventive maintenance far outweighs replacement every time, every single time. So replacing a piece of trim or replacing a section of gutter will be significantly cheaper versus having to go in and rebuild those tails and rebuild that soffit and rebuild that wall and then reside it and then repaint it, right? Because you're also looking at a skill level too. So where a maintenance tech could be more cost effective per hour because they don't typically have the same pay scale as somebody who's like a carpenter or even a plumber or electrician, if you want to get up into those brackets. But so just the labor alone is significantly different. So, as far as a cost amount, it's significant. I can't tell you how much per dollar because it really depends on the job.
Yeah.
But thousands and thousands of dollars. Absolutely. It'll save you. So.
That's really good insight. So let's talk about code compliance, because I know that's another issue. And you and I have talked a lot about panel upgrades for apartment owners. Right now, they're really experiencing that from both primarily their fire insurance companies are telling them, hey, you got to upgrade the panels.
Correct.
But there's also hazardous material testing. I believe there's a local university, they'll go nameless. They just got fined because they had some issues with hazardous material during a remodel that they didn't handle properly.
Right.
And it was a big ticket number.
It is. It's
ugly.
Very, very large. Yes. Fines are very large.
How do you deal with things like that before you start any demo work? Walk us through what that actually looks like in our market. For instance, for people that may be out of the Lane County area, explain to the listeners what like LRAPA is and the compliance people and...
Yeah, so LRAPAs are it's basically our local authority on hazardous materials and air quality. They have a set of guidelines that we adhere to that are in line with federal and state. And so they're not like far beyond or significantly different, but it's also a resource. And so I think a lot of people hear hazardous materials and I think a lot of customers just go, I don't want to deal with that. And so I'm just going to demo it and throw it away. Well, the simple fact is you might be able to get away with that, but they're also testing if you take a dumpster and you load it full of materials and you take it off to the dump, they will pull tests from that debris.
Wow.
And test it.
Wow.
And so it doesn't mean that they do it with every single dumpster, but they have done that in the past because they're trying to protect our environment in the best way they know how with the materials that we produce as humans. And so I think a lot of people get scared of it because they're like, it's going to cost me so much more money. The simple fact is it really doesn't. And it shouldn't be looked at as a surprise cost, right? There's hazardous material contractors that specialize in just removing that material. So they're more efficient at it. They're trained, they're certified, and we use those local contractors when we have to go through that process. And to figure out if it's hazardous, then we go through testing and we will submit tests and all of it's documented. And it goes in line, it goes with every single file, every job we have, so it protects us, it protects the customer, and it protects our community. So don't be worried. I think people get scared of it and they're like, I'm worried. I think it's going to be too much. It's not. It'll be okay. Just one step at a time, just like every project, right? One step at a time. And, and we're able to help with that. So we help facilitate all of that and make sure it's easy and simple, like I said before, for the customer.
Well, probably cheaper too than if you're trying to sneak something into a commercial grade dumpster and it winds up in the
Yeah.
landfill when they catch you. I can imagine your fines would be pretty significant.
Yeah, yeah, and and as far as the situation going on with the panels with local code compliance, that is something that I think took some people kind of off guard, and a little bit that I imagine that it would be scary when you get that letter like, hey, we're going to cancel your insurance unless you change out these panels. We're doing 40 panels right now in an apartment complex here in town, and they preventatively got ahead of that because that's just what's coming down the pipe. So, we see that coming in more and more and more. And, partnering, in a sense, they've partnered with us in doing their work because we've been working with them so long, but we're approaching it from a value-based. We're not looking at every panel and going, okay, well, we're going to make X amount of dollars. We're trying to make it affordable for our customers because we understand that this has been forced upon them, right? So it's our job just to support our client.
How do you do that in 40 units? Is it typically a full day and you just shut the electric off for...
It's a multiple day project, and they do shut off the power. Yeah, so we're a preferred contractor with EWEB, which is the local electricity board here. And so we do a lot of panel changes. So we have a great relationship with EWEB. But there has to be a communication there. It has to be set up. It has to be organized, and everything has to be planned. We can't just simply go, okay, we'll start next week and just start going in at it. Planning and preparation, that equals success. Yeah. Every time.
Yeah, absolutely. They typically shut the electric off at like 7:30 in the morning. You guys go in, start your job, and then they come back at like 4:30, right? And put the electricity back on, and then you lather, rinse, and repeat and do it the next day.
And a lot of customers think that their electricity is off for days, and it's not. It's a pretty simple process, actually. I guess it's simple because we're doing it repeatedly.
Talk to us about what an owner should kind of figure and budget for maybe compliance exposure and more like, so for the electrical panels as an example, that's really a one-time thing. And I think for a lot of property owners, apartment owners, they're just seeing that now. And so they're going to work it into their budget. But I'm thinking more strategy-wise, what should multifamily owners put into their budget for maintenance and also to stay in compliance with insurance companies?
You can go about it a lot of different ways, but the best way is to come up with a plan, research your compliances. What do you need to do? Partner with a good inspector because they're going to have the most relevant and newest information. There's industry leaders here that understand insurance. And I work with an individual named Amy, and she does that exact thing. So she goes in and she works with the client to make sure they stay within insurance compliance.
Wow.
And so she will make sure that she does pre-loss, so of all the items, and then she does a complete maintenance program or complete repair list, as you might say, to make sure that, if the insurance decides to take a satellite image of your roof, then, she's already ahead of it. She goes, hey, this is what they're going to see, and this is what you need to fix. And it may be that the roof needs to be replaced. It may be that simply just the moss on the roof is making it look like it's broken down and old. And so which annual maintenance for that is going to take care of that problem, right? Which then in turn prevents any ice damming, which then prevents any water intrusion into the shingles. And then you don't have to deal with that mess when it all defrosts or thaws out. But it's important to stay ahead of things. But I also don't think people should lose sleep over it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Like understand that you do have to protect your assets, but you don't need to go out there every time there's a rainstorm and jump up on your roof and take a flashlight and start looking around. Like, you shouldn't need to do that. Still live your life, but if you partner with the right people, it does make it much easier to just worry about the things that you need to do your day to day, and because then we take care of the things that you don't need to worry about.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what's going through my mind is a lot of HVAC units are on roofs for commercial. And so I'm thinking, boy, you nailed it because you talked about water backup and ice dams. And what we often see is when those ice dams then melt, then they run into the HVAC, or, they find a penetration into a flat roof. Whoever thought flat roofs in Oregon was a good idea, by the way?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't people think about a pitch?
Yeah.
And I own a building with a flat roof, so...
it's an interesting concept, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
No,
because
no,
they're still building them exactly how they are right now. So
I would agree with that.
But yeah, like when it comes to the TPOs or the PVCs, even the tar roofs, there's still preventative maintenance you have to do on those. And you have to check your seams. So because what happens is your seams get a separation, you get water in it, and it freezes and it expands the seam. And, when you get pooling on top of those roofs, then it can cause seam stress. And so you have to make sure that you have things cleared out, your drains are good, so that pooling doesn't cause more damage. Right? And it's like, oh, well, hey, look, it's holding water. It's doing its job. It is doing its job, but also it's not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
Right? So we minimal pooling, and ice can damage any roof. It doesn't matter, and any sort of moisture that freezes, it expands. So you can have potential issues from that.
Yeah.
So that's why we always recommend, at least annually get up there and have a roofing professional take a look. And our guys get up and they check the seams and they check all the penetration points and make sure that everything looks good. That's important.
Yep. I have your sister company Bond Roof come every year and clean on my commercial flat roof membrane, clean my gutters, check the seams, check the flashings around the HVAC units that are up on the roof, and really check the membrane, because with the hot and cold, that can cook that membrane. And then you're dealing with below it, the, what do they call the wood? I'm blanking.
CDX, plywood.
Yeah, the plywood underneath. That gets really expensive.
Yes.
If you are not doing the preventative maintenance that you need on that. So Tanner, talk to us about vendor selection, because this is where I see a lot of property owners make really expensive mistakes. They take the lowest bid. They skip any vetting process. They just call and say, I'm looking for a bid, and they'll take the cheapest. And what I've learned over the years really is you really want to get probably 3 bids, because that's going to give you a high, medium, and low, and give you a really good idea of what you should be looking at for that project. What should an apartment owner actually be looking for when they're thinking about hiring a contractor for a repair or a renovation and they're looking for a bid?
Yeah, I'm all about relationships. And the majority of this town is all about relationships. It's all about finding the right people to partner up with. Anyone who lives here can tell you that's how it is. So there's no difference when you're trying to find a contractor. So yes, absolutely get 3 bids. The lowest bid does not necessarily mean or determine that is the best fit for you. It could be the highest bid. A really important thing is do you understand one another? Do you get along? Do you guys have the ability to communicate? Not everybody is a good fit for everybody. As far as pricing goes, a lot of people are price driven because they are trying to get the most for their money. And oftentimes that's not necessarily how things end. I always recommend get 3 bids, but make sure you get along with the individuals. Make sure that they actually, you mesh, and look at their background. Look at talk to the people in the community, and have they been in the community for a short amount of time, or have they been here for years, and if they have a proven track record to supporting their customers. Because, thing is in just like anything in life, in construction, things can go wrong. And it's really not things going wrong, it's how you handle those things, right? So that can really separate you from a lot of other people in the same industry. Is it's like, oh, that went wrong, I'm gonna throw my hands up and walk away. That's not necessarily the right way to approach that. So when I think of like vendor partners, is yes, price is important, but also communication is important, and are they capable of performing the work? So if you're talking about 30-unit complex and you have to have all of it sided and you have to have it all re-roofed, and you're going to put mini splits in every single one of your units, can you find a vendor partner that can support you in that? So, because the cheapest bid may not be able to actually facilitate that project. And so that could lead to a lot of different challenges. So I always tell people, like, make sure it's a good fit, not just the money, everything else. Like, it's got to all work together.
When we also talk about vendors, how, as a property owner, how do I protect myself with rising prices? So if I'm getting like a roof bid or a mini split bid with tariffs and what's happening potentially internationally, just how do I protect myself against rising prices on a bid? Most of the time companies will guarantee it for what, 30 days?
30 days, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 days. And it's usually a protection for us to do that, because then it gives us, if you call back 2 years later and everything has changed, right?
That's
and
true.
So we just want to make sure we're protected on our side as well. And it's not fair to the customer either, because then you have to then issue a new price. But protecting yourself from increased cost it's challenging because it's inevitable. With the rising prices, the one thing that's guaranteed is materials go up every year. It's guaranteed. So that's kind of the hard thing, but they don't go up by 20, 30%, 2, 3%, 7%. But putting together a plan and maybe even talking with your vendor partner and say, hey, if I do this in a year, what do you think? Like, just based upon what you've seen, how much are these materials going to go up? Bond uses Owens Corning. Well, that's made, we get it right out of Portland, right? And so it's a higher end product. It has a longer lifespan, and they're certified in installation, and so that's the only roof that they use. Some property owners don't want to use that high-end product, and some do, because they realize, I don't want to be going up and replacing shingles, or I don't want to be going up and messing with anything after this is done, right? Yep. I want this to just last, right? So protecting yourself is really doing your due diligence, making sure you're talking to people who actually support you and have your back and what you're trying to accomplish. And the majority of people in the trades, we all want to do a good job. We all want the job to be successful. If you're trying to protect yourself from rising costs, try to do projections. Talk to your vendors. Say, hey, how much do you think this is going to go up in a year? They're not going to know for sure, but based upon industry, what have you seen? So do I need to save 10% more? 12%, what does that look like? Right? So, or is it more of an advantage for me to do it this year? Is there certain rebates? Right now, eWeb is doing rebates on mini splits.
Wow.
So is it better for me to do it now, or is it better for me to wait till next year? Well, the rebate may not be here next year. So, you could save $900 to $1,000 per unit. Well, if you times that over 30 units, $30,000 savings compared to the next year, that speaks volumes. If you wait till next year, we don't know how this is going to look, right? That's a simple, straightforward answer. Yeah. And those are the things you're trying to find when you're talking with these people, that you're working and trying to protect your asset.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize that eWeb was still offering a rebate. That's great. That's good information for those of you that own property in the local area. They'll also typically, I'm just going to segue real quick, because it's a huge benefit for your tenants. It reduces their heating and cooling, and more importantly, it gives them cooling in the summer months when it's 100 plus in July. So it makes your tenants stay more enjoyable in their property, and you can stretch it out. I know eWeb provides a program where you can stretch it out, so you can pay like $95 a month, I think over like 5 years. So it's a no-brainer for a benefit that you can give to your tenants. It makes it more efficient. When your tenants keep the heat and cool very kind of at an even base, it also prevents mold, mildew, because they're not cranking everything down to 62 degrees where you've got humidity problems. Yep. So it really preserves your property. And if eWeb's giving away a rebate and an incentive, you might check into it. So.
Yeah, it's a great advantage to take. If you're looking at upgrading your systems, then that could really be a determining factor of you doing it earlier versus later.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
And all those things you spoke of, those are, if the apartments don't have AC in them, the world is getting warmer. So AC is becoming more and more prevalent in homes in the Northwest.
Well, and your tenants are going to stay longer.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, they'll stay because they're going to enjoy the space and will stay longer.
Nobody likes moving.
No.
Nobody.
Sounds like you've moved a time or two. I have
moved
too.
a time or two.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
What are some red flags that tells you within the first few moments of walking onto a site that either the vendor or the project is going sideways?
Oh man, red flags. Usually just the condition of the property. So upkeep is not there. It's disorganized. Buildings are kind of pieced together. You can kind of tell going in that every unit is going to basically be like unique to itself. And so this unit might have different floors. That unit might have different appliances. That unit might have a mini split. This one doesn't. There's a lack of cohesion, and that's typically what I find is more of a reactive approach to caring for the property versus a proactive approach. So as far as red flags for seeing if a contractor is capable or if it's going well for them, organization, cleanliness, that's a big thing. Ehlers does restoration work, and they go in and they have to completely demolish the walls and the floors, and we have to take precaution to make sure that everything is protected. So masking and making sure they're clean up after themselves. And time again, our customers are so pleased with the cleanliness of the actual project, and it's organization. So I think that as funny as it sounds, but a dirty job site typically comes with disorganized approach. The more organized, the better. So you can kind of tell just where they put their priorities.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a really good reputation in the community for reliability, professionalism, and I think that really speaks about your guys that you have on your jobs and then the companies that you align with, and just the pride that you have in your work. It really shows, and that's why people reach out to you and say, hey, we need you on the job, and we need you to do this. I'm seeing a lot of property owners right now consider doing renovations, and they're debating about, do I just go in and do the basic, the minimum to try to get higher rents? And they're starting to weigh it out. Like, right. I can put $3,000 in this, but I'm only going to get $50 more in rent. So if somebody wants to renovate, what's that look like for you guys? If somebody's going to do like 20 units, because you and I both know it's an economy of scale. You're not going to really want to go in and do one. You're going to want to do 20 for flooring and everything else. What's kind of the minimum that you see most people look at? Is it flooring and countertops and cabinets, or are they just resurfacing cabinets, or actually putting in brand new cabinets?
So it kind of depends on the cabinets themselves, if they're able to be refinished or they have to be completely repainted. But that's kind of hit and miss. It really depends on the original cabinetry. So, but I would say that probably the biggest improvements that we do see is paint, floors, and cabinets. That's really what it is, because it makes the home feel so much different, right? It makes it feel nicer and cleaner, and it has that feel good energy when you walk into it. That's typically what we're seeing. So, not really seeing people go in and do complete guts. They're not going, okay, we're going to write to studs and we're going to do all new sheetrock, and it's really unnecessary to do that for most situations. But people really are staying away from tile. They're really trying to stick with things that don't need that constant maintenance. So that's more of what I would consider that more of a luxury item. But with the flooring and people are wanting to go in and do more of a minimal kind of upgrade, I think that a lot of times that they don't really think about the longevity of the products they're putting in. So, and like not all products are created equal. And so my background in flooring, I saw a lot of people choosing products that were just really inferior and they were price driven and they end up falling apart and not working within 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Right. And also cutting corners. Like if you were to go in and do all new LVP throughout and your substrate is all over the place, it would be more of a cost benefit for you to level out your floor and then put your flooring down.
Yep.
So you don't have deflection, which causes compromising, and then the flooring starts to break apart. And once it starts going, it's gone. Right. So, that simple approach to, okay, well, this is going to be a $1,200 addition to every unit I'm doing, but my floor is going to have a much longer lifespan. So you could go with a more cost-effective flooring on a much more solid substrate and get the maximum return for just going that way versus I'm going to just put the most cost-effective flooring down on whatever substrate's there and call it a day. So that's where, again, partnering with good vendors, where they look at that and they go, this is really where you need to go with this. Because I feel like that's where the responsibility of the owner ends and the responsibility of the contractor begins to try to put them on the best path forward. So that's important that we're thinking that way.
Yeah.
Right. So
we're going to drop in the show notes Tanner's personal cell phone number. And when you get ready to go to Home Depot or Lowe's to do your weekend warrior project, call Tanner. No, I'm teasing. We won't do that to him. He's got kids. He's busy.
I am busy. Yeah. Yes. So I'm always willing to help though. So even if we can't help them, I will always try to put someone on the right path, because
that's awesome.
It can be a very challenging and stressful environment when you're trying to improve on things. And I've been doing it long enough that I don't know everything. I'm always learning new things. And, but if I can put someone on a good path forward, then I'm happy with that.
That's awesome. Let's talk about labor shortages. So how bad is it locally and where do you see it heading?
Labor shortage is a lot more serious than people want to give it credit. It does need attention. So right now, the average age of a construction worker is 55 years old.
Really? Wow.
So if you were to take that and you were to look at 10 years from now and that average doesn't change, what does that tell you? It tells you that our workforce is retiring out.
Yeah.
There's a couple different studies, but the numbers range from 5 to 7. So for every 5 to 7 that retire or get out of the trades, one replaces them.
Wow.
So when you're talking labor deficit, it's been a continuous problem for decades, and it hasn't been addressed enough. The thing is the trades, there's a lot of trades that pay very well. There's a lot of trades that you can absolutely have a career in. And I think that the younger generation just needs to get more exposed to that. And so I believe that the best way to do that is to reach out to younger people and let them know you can job shadow. You can look at these and not commit to one. You can just kind of get exposed to it and see if it works for you.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But it's a sad fact that we're struggling in that side of it.
Yeah.
We're very much struggling.
Yeah. So. Wow, 55. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's concerning, especially for us that are, actively trying to grow companies, because we look at the future, just as all people do who work in companies and want to grow them. And we see, where's the workforce going to be in 10 years? Well, companies may not be able to survive because they can't find people to work. Yeah. It's not about finding the work. Yeah. Which is the opposite of what it's been in the past. And so the future is uncertain, and I hope that it doesn't go that route, but it's something that I've known about for many, many years. And I've always told people about it. I've always said, we're in a deficit, absolutely get into the trades. You can find a lot of good jobs, good people, and have a good career and really grow yourself and build yourself within these careers. And that's something that I think that people shouldn't shy away from. So I grew up in the trades, and it shaped me to the person I am today. And it taught me a lot of lessons that I don't think I would have learned any other place. So I appreciate what it did for me, and I would love it if, the younger generation would consider that as being something that they could have as an asset to themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, here's what I tell every investor that I work with. Costs are going up. It just is happening, period. So the question is, when you're looking at your property, do you build a reserve account, or do you actually spend the money now and try to be more preventative, or do you just kind of wait and find out the hard way?
Well, it's definitely not the third option. That's for sure. Due to the increase in prices, almost guaranteed annually.
Yeah.
It really is a benefit to do it now and then work on a really solid preventative maintenance plan. That's going to be where you are going to have the best return on your investment. Because if you want to sell in 5 years or in 10 years and you have a 10-year plan of preventative maintenance, you're going to get the maximum amount for your sale, right? And you would know that more than me.
Yeah.
But I see the beginning of it, and then I see the beginning of it, right?
Yeah.
So,
and you probably see the end of it where now a buyer calls you and says, "Hey, I'm doing due diligence. Could you come look at my property that I'm looking to buy?" And
right.
You walk up and it's a train wreck, and you're like, "Where do I start?"
Yes. So I think because costs are guaranteed to go up, so doing it now makes sense. But not everybody's in that financial position. Yeah. So put a plan together. I keep saying plan. Planning is going to make it so much simpler and not stressful. So imagine doing no plan, and all of a sudden you get hit with, oh, well, you have to do the panel changes, and all of them have to be done by 2027. And you're like, I don't even know where to begin, right? Because we really don't know what that's going to look like. It could change. It can really change at any time. So that would be my recommendation, is always try to do things as soon as you can, just because costs go up every year. Labor goes up every year because we have a dwindling labor force. So the less there is, the more they cost. Yeah,
don't wait 10 years, because all those 55-year-old guys are going to be retired.
They're going to be gone.
And then we're down to one as opposed to 4 to 5.
It's gonna be an interesting time if that happens.
Yeah. Well, Tanner, thank you for being here. Tell the listeners how they could find you. We're going to also put your contact in the show notes, but tell people, should they connect with you on LinkedIn? Do you want to give your company name again and they could look you up there? How do people find you?
Yeah. So I'm always on LinkedIn, and then you can find us online at ehlersservicegroup.com, and then you can also give us a call at 541-689-6177, and we'll be able to help you out with any of your projects. And if you just need someone where you're like, I need to bounce some ideas off of, I don't know where this is going to go, then you can absolutely reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help, as long as trying to get you in the right direction, and that's all I care about. So it was great being here. I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's going to be a good thing here in the next couple of years, and we'll see this grow. So yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Thanks.